All right, ladies and gentlemen, today we are talking about Georgia's run defense and why there's a chance this year that for the fourth time in the last 5 years, they get in college football with the #1 rushing defense in the country. It's just a tremendous mark. But before I get to that, let's just be real for a second, all right? Now, I know a lot of Alabama, Tennessee, Florida, Auburn fans who watch this channel, they're not going to want to say this. It's going to be painful for them to admit it. But over the last 4 years, no program has built a better defense than the University of Georgia's. Of course, last year they were very good. In 2021, they had arguably the greatest defense in college football history. And they weren't too bad in 2020 and 2019 either. But the fact remains, nobody has been able to run on Georgia's defense. And it's that way for a number of different reasons, right? You've got the scheme that Kirby Smart, Glenn Schumann, Trey Scott, the scheme they've implemented in Georgia. You've got the overall talent, which goes back to recruiting. I'm going to talk about that as well. And the overall depth that they have. A lot of teams, have some guys on the defensive line who are really good and some linebackers. But if you look at Georgia's front seven since 2019, they've had all the pieces necessary to have the best rushing defense in the country. Now, I know everyone's going to talk about, well, hey, you can pass on Georgia, right? CJ Stroud had a monster game against Georgia in a losing effort. Bryce Young, Heisman Trophy winner, threw all over Georgia in the 2021 SEC Championship. We know what Mac Jones did in 2020, one of the best seasons any quarterback has ever had in college football. He threw on Georgia. And then Joe Burrow, we know what he did in 2019. Right? He's also put up one of the best seasons any quarterback has ever had in college football history. It takes an elite quarterback to beat the Georgia Bulldogs right now. I've talked about that for a long, long time. And even, in the case for Bryce Young in the national championship game and CJ Stroud in the Peach Bowl, even if you play one of your best games, it's still not going to be good enough a lot, right? So, even if you have an elite quarterback who has one of his best games, if you don't have a rushing attack, you are not beating Georgia. And there's not a single team that's been able to run on Georgia successfully in the last 4 years. 2022, they were first in rushing defense, averaging just 81.2 yards given up a game. 2021, they were second. Of course, 2021 was their best defense, one of the best defenses anyone has ever seen in college football. They came in second. I believe Wisconsin was number one, but they only gave up 80.1 rushing yards a game. 2020, they were first in college football again, giving up 72.3 rushing yards a game. And in 2019, they were tied for first, giving up 78 rushing yards a game. Now, I don't know. Before this video started, I was thinking, who is the last running back to go over 100 yards against Georgia? A few teams have, been able to rush for a combined in over 100 yards, with different guys, whether it's a quarterback, two running backs, whatever. But I still don't know. I don't like to look up everything before I make these videos, right? That just takes some of the fun out of it. But I'm willing to bet about 95% of the people watching this video now probably can't think of the last running back to rush for over 100 yards against Georgia's defense. Maybe it's an easier answer than, I remember, but I want someone to drop that in the comments section. I know someone's going to tell me I'm an idiot, I'm a dummy for not, thinking about it, but I didn't look it up. But I think most people have to look it up because it's just so tough to do for a lot of reasons, right? Let's go back. Let's talk about the scheme. The scheme that Kirby has implemented at Georgia it's a big reason why Georgia's had the best defense in the last 4 years for sure, but let's look at the defensive line, right? You got the nose guard, you get the 3 technique, the 5 technique. They're all doing different things. They all have their job. There's a reason why Zion Logan, Tramel Walther aren't exactly lighting up the stat sheet, right? They're either taking on double teams or, they're shooting another gap, allowing the 5 technique to, stunt around and come through the middle, or the outside linebacker, the 7 technique, whatever you want to call them over there. They can stunt around because the nose guard is doing his job and taking up, the guard and the center, right? They're doing their job. There's all these moving parts. You see Georgia, there's so much pre-snap going on along the defensive line. And not only does it cause a lot of false starts, right? Just ask Tennessee, who was false start left and right, Notre Dame, Arkansas, Kentucky, so on and so on, especially in Athens. It's even tougher to run on them because they've got the crowd just going bonkers. But if you think if you're an offense, you think you can run the football at Georgia and then they all move, then they all stunt, and they know what their job is. And half the guys, their job is not to make the tackle. It's to eat up blocks, eat up space for someone else to make the tackle, including the linebackers, right? We're talking about the whole front seven here. Nakobe Dean was great at this because he was able to run free, get sideline to sideline, or come around because those big, heavy defensive linemen, they were doing their job. And Georgia had a lot of those. Jordan Davis, Devonta Wyatt, Trayvon Walker, Jalen Carter, who was not even a starter on the 2021 National Championship team, although he might have been the best pure defensive lineman on the roster. There's so many guys who just do their job. And if you're an NFL caliber talent, like a lot of those guys are or were, and you're not double teamed when you're a guy who commands one, then you are going to make, play in the backfield and create that havoc, right? But, even when the defensive line doesn't get there, Nakobe Dean, Channing Tindall, Quay Walker, Small Munda, Jamon Dumas-Johnson, those are big-time talented guys. And if they're running free, they're going to make a tackle. They can shoot the gaps. They can play in the trench as well. They are great at playing, between the tackles, right? Getting in there, getting in the middle. It's so hard to run up the middle against Georgia successfully when you have a guy like Jordan Davis doing his job, eating up space. Zion Logue does a great job of that also. Devonta Wyatt did the same thing, but he also found his way into the backfield a good bit. But when you've got speedy linebackers who run sideline to sideline, not only can you not go up the middle, but you can't get out in space either. You can't get to the sideline and go up. I mean, it's just guys doing their job. And I think that's going to be really tough again this year. There may be no Trayvon Walker on the roster. There's no Jalen Carter. But Nazir Stackhouse is a experienced veteran who's going to do his job. Zion Logue, Tramel Walthour, Warren Brinson. These guys know what they're doing. And a lot of the time, their job is not to make the tackle, but it's to do their job. Number two, talent, right? Half the guys that I talked about are 5 stars, right? It's tough to have the number 1 rushing defense in America when you're full of 3 and 4 stars, right? You have to have elite talent to do that, and Georgia is turning them out. They're a machine. 5-star after 5-star on the defensive line. And they're deep. They're talented. They rotate guys as well as anyone. There's a reason they're bringing in, I think they have 6 defensive linemen committed right now in the 2024 class. You can read more about everything we've got going on over on Dawg Post. Click the link down below to subscribe to the newsletter. A lot of content we're pumping out right now. It's free. It's free. You get an email every day with all the stories. Half the stories right now are free. It's free to sign up to the newsletter. Make sure you do that. Click the link below. And you can read all about these defensive linemen that Trey Scott is pumping out. But a lot of teams have a good, first string defensive line, right? There aren't many who have 5 stars below them and 5 stars below them and guys that you can switch out and keep healthy, keep fresh the way Georgia is. And that's a reason why, a lot of these defensive linemen in high school, know that they can play at Georgia because they rotate so much. And when you're fresh, a second string guy who's fresh, and a lot of time is a better option than a tired first string guy out there, right? So when you can rotate and develop quality depth full of elite talent, and you have the scheme, and you've got veterans, leaders who know what their job is and can teach the guy behind them what to do in certain scenarios, that equals an elite defense. And again, I know that some quarterbacks, not a lot, but some elite quarterbacks have had some success throwing the ball, but nobody's running on this defense. They haven't for the last 4 years, and I don't think many are going to do it in 2022 as well. Tennessee has a couple of running backs who are good. They're quality backs. I don't know if they're going to be able to rush, consistently on Georgia. I know Ole Miss, Judkins, the young talented running back they have, he might, pose somewhat of a threat, but I'd be surprised if he went by himself over 100 yards. It's not just the backs. You have to have an elite offensive line to match up with Georgia's elite front seven too. So if you want to run the football, not only do you have to have a big time premier back, but you have to have one of the best offensive lines in college football. Just ask Michigan. Michigan couldn't do anything, and they supposedly have the best offensive line in college football and have for the last 2-3 years now. It's not. Georgia's had the best offensive line too. I can make a whole nother video about that. But championships and the game of football is still played in the trenches, right? You can throw it all over the place. You can spread them out and, get it to your weapons, play sideline to sideline. But at the end of the day, if your offensive line is getting pushed backwards and you can't run the football, you're not scoring points and you're not winning championships. And you got to get to the quarterback. You got to stop the run. That's exactly what Georgia's been able to do for several years now. This is not just, a 1 year thing. Then they're, garbage. Then they come back. No, this is consistent. Again, they were the best team in run defense in 2022, 2020, and 2019. And they were number 2 in 2021. And if you want to add some context, if the eyeball test is context, they had the best defense in college football. The past 2 years, for sure. You can make the case, I guess, for 2020, 2019, they were excellent. They're going to be very, very good again in 2023. I don't know if anyone's going to be able to run on this team this fall or for the foreseeable future, because I know the talent that they're bringing in. I cover recruiting. I know that they are bringing in some dogs on the defensive line and more at linebacker too. It's going to be very, very tough to run on Georgia for the foreseeable future. If I'm wrong, let me know. Drop a comment in the section below. Make sure you sign up to the newsletter. That link is down below. Appreciate you watching these videos. As always, stay tuned to the next one coming up right now, and I will see you over on Dawg Post.